Just want us to.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our second seedling session, which is a new innovation from Agri-EPI. Today, I'm speaking with Thomas Ferrugia, who is the Chief Executive Officer of BetaBugs. BetaBugs are members of Agri-EPI and are tenants in our Northern Hub in Edinburgh. BetaBugs' main focus is on development and distribution of breeds of black soldier fly. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the second seedling session. Today I'm speaking with Thomas Ferrugia, CEO of BetaBugs. BetaBugs are one of our tenants at the Northern Hub in Edinburgh and also Agri-EPI members. And their main focus is on the development and distribution of black soldier flies into the insect protein industry. So good afternoon, Thomas, and welcome, and thank you for participating in today's event. So insects as a protein source. We've got a global population of approximately 8 billion, I believe, and we struggle to feed those. How are we going to sort of make steps towards ensuring that everyone gets fed and future population growth gets fed?
Okay. So yes, as you said, there is 8 billion at the moment. We're struggling to feed those, but we also have more people on the way. So it's 9 billion by 2050. And as a result of all this, there is that looming protein gap in terms of meeting demand. I think what we're really seeing now is agri-food being driven to change and seek new sources of protein. And insects is one of them, but we've also got your insects, your algae, fungal proteins, and we've got this change happening in agri-food to develop these sources of protein and also scale them, because they need to be able to feed. It's a large number of people, so you need to be able to feed at scale. And actually, it's not just the people, it's the animals which are being used to feed the people.
Okay. And obviously insects as a protein source or as a feed source in human consumption perhaps is more acceptable in other parts of the world than the UK, certainly, or Europe per se. How will we overcome those perceptions of, people being squeamish about insects as a food source?
Yeah, so there is definitely the yuck factor, and people being squeamish about eating insects. That's when it's for food. What we're seeing is increasing acceptance of it, though. When you look at the benefits of farming insects in general, they have very high feed conversion ratios because they don't need much heating as well, and therefore they're an effective source of protein, not as much water. They can actually be reared on food waste streams in some instances, and actually they can turn out to be carbon negative because you're saving food waste from going to landfill. So there's that angle to it, so the sustainability angle. And I think really we'll see, for food at least, insects, rather than being served straight on the plate whole, they'll be used as an ingredient in the same, nearly a flour, for example, a cricket flour, which can be used to make pasta, which can be used to make bread. Now, we're not operating in that space per se. We're addressing the feed sector, and that's the other bit where insects will, I think, form an increasing part of that supply chain, because you can use them as a protein source for fish, pigs, and chickens. And you can also use the insect oils to supplement animal feeds as well.
Okay, so in terms of, I guess, introducing insects into the food supply chain, you think probably more into the animal feed supply chain rather than the human feed supply chain at the moment. What's the legislation situation around those food sources, I suppose? Because I believe there's different categories in different parts of the world.
Yes, and looking at the EU, for example, so I mean, the UK has been part of the EU, so we've got some of that change already come through. What the EU did was, in 2017, they approved insect protein from 7 species for use in aquafeed. So when we say insect meal, it's the protein powder or the meal powder when you mince up the insects. and you get that meal, and then you can use it in a compound feed. So, for example, fish pellets. So that's been approved, and we are seeing motion towards approval for pigs and chickens as well, and the same reason in the same approach. So effectively, compound feed. You can already feed live insects to chickens as it stands. So that's the EU perspective. Now, from a UK perspective, if these new changes happen, we'll then have to see those track independently in the UK for them to be approved, because we're now not part of the EU. And then if you go further afield, America has also developed its own regulation, as has Canada, and that's kind of again using whole insects and looking at the fractions of the insects in the supply chain.
And would legislation be different with feed sources as well? So feed sources for the insects, because obviously there's limits on what waste streams you could use, I guess.
Yes, there's at the moment it's pre-consumer vegetable food waste at EU level, and that it's primarily what we've got there is because insects have been classed as farmed animals, and therefore there's constraints on what they can be fed and can't be fed. I think over time we'll see that broaden as a definition as to what they can be reared on, and that will then enable us to actually see the industry scale further, because you will be able to access more substrates for the insects to be grown on.
Okay, so scaling is probably really important to sort of the development of the industry.
Yes.
Like you say, I don't know the total costs of a ton of produced insect protein. I guess it's quite high in comparison to what we consider to be traditional sorts of protein. So
there's been some work done on this by the WWF report as well recently. But yes, insect protein prices are still, because we will have to see the scale get unlocked, the price is still high. As scale happens, the price will come down. So this is nearly, I think the WWF report quoted, once a certain scale is hit, it's around £590 a ton of insect protein. But that's coming in the future. It's not now. And as a result, this is why the industry needs to scale. And I think from our perspective as well, apart from just achieving economies of scale, it's also through increasing productivity. And that's where genetics comes in.
Okay, and that's your main focus then, is the genetic side of things, to make things more efficient.
Yeah, so effectively black soldier fly larvae, which grow bigger, faster, and are more efficient in their conversion of the substrates they are grown on.
Okay. So you're suggesting then insects are a key part of the future food system. I can see it happening myself. Whether I could go and eat a bunch of crickets from a bag, I'm not so sure. But I guess if it was mixed into a flour with, a carrot cake or something, I wouldn't even know any difference. But I suppose it's overcoming those sort of those problems. Is there any problem, I suppose, in terms of dietary requirements from insect protein that affects, that might have an impact on people being able to have them in their food?
So the one which has been described briefly is the chitin. It's a bit like if people are allergic to crustaceans and something like effectively, which also have chitin in the exoskeleton, you can get some sort of reaction to that, but it's a minority of the population, and in effect it's something you take into account, and you put the labels on saying contains exoskeletal products, and then it's kind of, well, that's part of the supply chain process. It's worth noting that mealworms have been approved for human food consumption by the FSA, and there's other insects, that's the European Food Standards Agency, and other insects tracking their way through the system as well.
Okay, brilliant. So there seems to be some appetite, excuse the pun, for insects into the food supply chain. I guess what you need now is investment into the industry to make it happen and scale more quickly.
What we're seeing, I think it's an interesting time for the industry, is more facilities coming online and scaling. And I think increasingly we're going to see new market entrants come into the industry. And now's a good time actually to get involved, because when I say new market entrants, it will be agri-food companies themselves who might be thinking of diversifying their operation. Perhaps they have they are in the supply chain and they have line of sight to substrates which can be used to grow the insects. Perhaps they have heat sources and the means to do it. And so it's really interesting seeing companies come in saying, we want to set this up. We'll access the technology that's available already, and then we'll do it ourselves. And that's very exciting, actually. And we're here to enable that as well.
That's fantastic. Well, I appreciate your time. I think I probably have exhausted my list of questions I had for you, and you've answered them very thoroughly. So I appreciate that. I know we'll be sharing this on our website, and I think also on our Members Connect session or Members Connect site on LinkedIn. So again, thank you for your time, Thomas, and hopefully speak to you soon.
Brilliant. Thank you, Duncan. Enjoy this a lot.
Take care. Bye-bye.